Good afternoon, dear guests which are connected online in this virtual environment. Welcome, dear guest speakers who are going to be a panelist on today's last panel discussions, which is going to be the part of the Virtual Tech Summit. It is my pleasure to welcome you all, and hope you will enjoy the conversation, which will be, in accordance to me, that much important and interesting, which is the last but not least at the end of the day. So the thesis of today's panel discussion is going to be the labor market in a crisis. My name is Katarína Hazuchová. I'm an independent environmental analyst and an expert on innovative education, cooperating with institutions like State Institute for Vocational Education and Training, working on the lecturing of teachers in innovative teaching methods and in transposing the innovation and technology in the curricula and in the state and school education systems. It is my great pleasure to introduce our today guest speakers. On my left hand, when I see the virtual environment, it's Soren Peters from Denmark. So as you can see, today's topic, we are going to speak, of course, about the COVID. In terms of labor market crisis, it is transferring, or it is moving across the borders. So it is another global phenomenon. There have been another panel discussions in yesterday and today morning, which you have an opportunity to see the discussions which have been talking about another global phenomenon. Like Mr. Mikko, he was speaking about the Green Deal, which is the case of another global phenomenon like climate change, but today we are going to speak about COVID crisis. So please, again, I'm coming back to our guest speakers, Soren Peters from Denmark. Welcome, Soren. Martin Vaňo from Slovakia. Chief Economist from Mazars. Welcome, Martin. Now we have another guest speaker, which is Libor Bešenyi, which is the CEO of the Xolution company. And last but not least, we have, of course, Karlubík, which is the president of Association of Employment Industry, or of Employers of Slovakia, AZZZ. So welcome the speakers on this floor, and I will shortly introduce now the thesis of our panel. So nowadays we are speaking about the COVID crisis. Of those who have heard previous discussions, is nothing new. That maybe it's a rare phenomenon occurring once in a few years, but it has a great potential, disruptive potential, and it has a great impact not only on the health system but also the economic one and the social one. These are the basic aspects we would like to discuss in today's discussion. And of course, it is related to certain sectors and to certain segments of the economy. And now we have here the experts who are going to respond to these challenges, respective to their field of specialization and respective to my questions, which I'm trying to pose to you all. So. First of all, the COVID crisis, it is perceived by many experts, many companies, by global surveys and global data analysts that it may bring some changes to the economies, to the societies, to the labor market, to the employment services, but also it may cause some disruptions. So not all of the players which I mentioned in here in this field are going to survive the crisis. And our panel is going to discuss the solutions and the impacts which will occur in these specific fields and these segments. So first of all, I would like to mention that this so-called black swan disruption, which occurs once in many years, the last such disruptions was in 2005, as well as we all remember, can cause really a significant changes also in the way how the businesses operate. The changes, it may change their business models. It may create opportunities to innovate for companies to invest more in innovation, to invest more in solutions like technological solutions like 5G connections, like artificial intelligence solution based on a blockchain architecture, on robotics and other aspects. There are many things to be discussed, but let's see how the companies are going to cope with this challenge, because not all the companies are at the same playing field, of course. And some of those companies which had already a chance to invest and to invest capital expenditures to the robotics and to artificial intelligence, maybe gradually, but this is also something which can be discussed, because deployment of artificial intelligence and the robotics is rather a case of the sudden event. That's why I'm talking about the black swan and the current COVID crisis. But those who haven't done yet, they might have a completely different environment or the level playing field, how to start, how to invest, and how to find skilled personnel in their companies to take a lead, to take an example, to educate another employees, which may be in the same time, which may be they may remain at the remote locations, at homes and the remote workstations, if this is being supported by the companies. This is also not a very certain thing. So I would like to ask you, for instance, Martin, you are an analyst. You work for Mazars, Slovakia. By the way, it is the company or the consultancy company which has a global outreach. Could you please compare the global environment to the Central European region and to the Slovak region? What could be exactly a possible impact, if you may say, to some selected sectors where we can expect the major affection, like the healthcare services, or maybe the education, maybe the manufacturing services? And could you please provide us with a certain prediction for possible investors or for possible decision makers in a companies, where to focus attention to, what would be the best case scenario for them, not to lose that much capital, not to lose that much human capital, not only the financial. Could you please elaborate a little bit on this?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for invitation. So, first of all, when it comes to the impact of the COVID crisis on the labor market, not only in Central and Eastern Europe, I would like to emphasize that this crisis will only unearth, to an extent, it will be transformative, but let's remind ourselves that to a major extent, this crisis, when it comes to the labor market, will simply speed up some of the processes that we have been witnessing, most importantly the ongoing automation and robotization of economy and especially the labor market. So when it comes to the impacts, short-term impacts are various. The service sector, industries like hotels and restaurants, obviously that's one of those areas from which we have already seen a significant increase of unemployment, basically for a very simple reason. If due to the preventive measures, the hotels and restaurants are forced to shut down their revenues are, in the case of hotels, technically zero, provided they are able to do some long-term bookings. I've seen hotels that made initiatives, don't cancel your stay, just shift the date of your stay, and that is applicable for spa treatments or these wellness hotels. But other than that, the hotels are now running dry when it comes to revenues, and that has very clear implications when it comes to the employment. So this is one of those extreme examples of industries where the preventive measures related to COVID have led to, I dare to say, significant unemployment, partly due to the fact that even though the hotel operators do understand that the business will revive later this year, we are not sure in how many weeks or months, they also understand that for them it's important to be ready for that period when the business will start kicking in again in a good financial condition, and therefore they are not really ready to carry on the burden of continuing to employ variable, or the employees who are variable cost throughout this difficult time. Then there is more on the spectrum of extreme impact, extreme negative impact. Restaurants. Restaurants again have taken a massive hit to their revenues. Tried to, in many cases, to compensate for it by the delivery services, but what I'm hearing from small and medium-sized entrepreneurs in Slovakia, even if you really try hard, this can cover something like 10% of the revenues during the normal operation, I mean the delivery services. So it does provide a certain cash flow, but anyway, it does not enable you to sustain the employment at the previous levels. Therefore, it's not surprising that we have seen in Central Europe. So far, we don't have the data from Slovakia, but I would expect them to be similar as in the Czech Republic or in the neighboring Austria, where the unemployment due to COVID increased significantly, and that's exactly because of these sectors that were hit most severely. One should be reminded when we speak about the preventive measures or the compensating measures to provide liquidity to entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs should not be treated as people who don't know what they are doing. They do understand that in the situation where your revenue stream is close to zero, you have no other choice than to do something about your cost. And no compensation scheme from the government can compensate for that. Therefore, for example, the country like Austria, which has a significant hotel and restaurant leisure business, have seen in the last 2 weeks of March, unemployment jumping from 300,000 to over 560,000. Basically, in 2 weeks, when these preventive measures related to COVID kicked in, the unemployment went from 4.4% up to over 12%, the highest level since 1946, the highest level in almost 75 years. And we are talking about a country which has allocated 38 billion euros to the liquidity assistance to the business sector, and which has rather effective so-called Kurzarbeit scheme. So again, this just reminds that these assistance measures for the labor market are important, but they do play an important role for companies where the human capital is carrying irreplaceable, unique qualification. Here we speak, for example, about some of the manufacturers or advanced manufacturers, including some of the Slovak automotive factories which are assembling those cars which are on the high-end spectrum of the cost and therefore associated sophistication of the production. And for these, the decision whether to lay off people or whether to try to carry them over this difficult 2 months, we don't know if it might be more, there the assistance measures do make more sense, and they could prevent the disruptive moves in the labor market. But just to sum up this introductory contribution, then one has to keep in mind industries where the loss of jobs would have happened in any case, just because of this COVID crisis, this process will accelerate, and the automation and robotization will kick in maybe faster than it would under standard situation. And also, just to sum up, as we are here to discuss the impact on the labor market, what we are experiencing, and therefore we should treat it with adequate, let's say, academic respect, has not been seen before. As you have mentioned, Katarína, we, especially in China, in East Asia, we have seen several pandemics over the past 30 years. We've seen the swine flu, we've seen the H1N1, we've seen the SARS virus. This time it's different because of the extent of the spread of this virus, but also because of the extent of the preventive measures taken to contain it. Already in China, I mean, China have seen the sales of cars dropping by 80% in February. We shouldn't be surprised to see a very similar pattern in Slovakia. China in February, which was the worst case in terms of preventive measures, has seen a 23% drop in the retail sales. We shouldn't be surprised to see over 20% drop in retail activity. Also in Central Europe, actually, we do have preliminary data for the second half of March, which showed that the sales of textiles and clothing were down by 80%. The sales of groceries, sales in pharmacies did increase. Online food delivery went through the roof, increased by over 200% from the data for the second half of the March. So we do see the dynamic change, but just to underline how unprecedented event we live from the viewpoint of the labor market. The previous recession in the US in 2008 and 2009, it's dated from the December 2007 until the third quarter 2009, and during those more than 1.5 years, the US labor market lost in total 9 million jobs. In the 3 weeks of these extreme preventive measures, so the second half of March and the first week of April, the US labor market shed 16 million jobs. 16 million jobs in the first 3 weeks, and that's not the end, I'm afraid to say. So when we look at the labor market on one side, the acceleration of this automation and robotization trends and processes is something that would have been inevitable. The big difference is if that process would be spread out over the longer period, or if it happens as it does nowadays in a one shock dose. So it's something worth paying more attention. Also, what's worth paying more attention to is what shall we do with those people who would not be able to return back to their jobs after this crisis subsides because of the transformation of their businesses or because of speeded up robotization and automation. So certainly that's something worth paying attention to. And just one last remark, this is important not only from the viewpoint of the consumption, not only from the viewpoint of the domestic demand, it's also rather important from the viewpoint of social cohesion and political stability. And here, unfortunately, crises like this, I wouldn't like to draw the worst case scenarios, but let's be reminded that Spanish flu in 2018 preceded the Great Recession at the end of 20s, and that economic disturbance, which led to significant pain on the labor market, did not end well, and I would not underestimate the negative impact of the current development in the labor market on the political stability, not only in Central Europe, but worldwide.
Okay, thank you, Martin. I think our panel discussion is interesting from the point of view that we don't want to focus that much on the political stability, which is very volatile also in our country nowadays, because of course there have been adopted some legislation, Lex Corona, which is specifying some the package of the measures in order to support the companies, in order to support the entrepreneurs, in order to support the industry. But we cannot expect this package is going to fulfill all the needs which we have in a society. As I mentioned at the beginning, the COVID crisis is not just the economic concern, but also the social one. So we have to find solutions how to handle it. And the technology and automation and the robotics might be possibly useful in order to help this in a combination with the proper education. Because we need skilled people. Thank you very much for what you mentioned, that the services sector is going to be probably infected the most. But when it comes to the manufacturing sector and the automotive industry, for instance, there is also not the same level playing field. Some of the heavy investors in education and in automation and robotics throughout the previous years, such as Volkswagen company, they created a dual academy, and they are trying to continue work in a dual environment, in a dual system, not from the educational point of view, but from the practical point of view. They invested in robotics, so they have some automations ongoing, but also they offer online courses for their employees and requalifications for people who are interested to work in a segment in order to be up to date with their skills and in order to contribute to the quality of the workforce. Now, the question is whether another companies or another institutions would be willing or would have all those necessary resources to follow their suit or to continue this trajectory, because it might be in a middle and in a long term more successful than make some sudden changes in a company and to get rid of the employees. They try to solve the dilemma either to hire or to fire. Okay, so if some employees are not have difficulties to remain in the company in the meantime, they can take time. There are some government measures. They can receive not the full salary they had previously in the company, but there is some support scheme. They can invest their free time in education and requalifications. But the question is this model affordable to another institutions, to another companies? All of the schools in Slovakia were closed. The students, they rely on their parents and on their digital facilities like internet, nothing very complicated, but they have connections to internet from home or not. And this is going to have an impact on the final outcomes, whether they will be able to follow the education, the school curricula, which they will need to their examinations, the yearly examinations, and this is quite questionable. Now I would like to ask you, Roman Karlubík, from Vice President of the Association of Employment Industry in Slovakia. You have your experts are present at the ministerial discussions and negotiations. When it comes to the school curricula, you have also the presence in the secondary vocational education institutions. What is your point of view on the situation? Is this crisis going to reveal what has already been what has already started, which reforms has already started in Slovakia in terms of education and the connection to the labor market, or is it going to change the situation somehow? And if yes, please try to share with us what could be the differences and how you think these could be handled.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, once again. Actually, the topic is impact of this crisis on the labor market. And I'm afraid we have to start a little bit from the beginning, because most important thing is actually if we are able, especially developed our society in the developed countries, to take a lesson from this crisis. And actually, what is the difference, what Mr. Vaňo was talking, and is quite important, because he was talking also about that there were similar, let's say, situation in SARS and all other viruses and so on. But the difference, I mean not medical difference, but let's say a little bit shock for societies in developed countries is that, oh, now even very highly developed society in Europe or in States are very heavily impacted, or is very heavily impacted. Yeah. And this is quite a big shock, and it's showing us actually how vulnerable the system is. This system is not only system economical, political, social, of highly developed or top societies in the world, yes, but generally. And if we can take a lesson somehow to improve, because this impact of coronavirus showed us very big lack of unification of legislature in European Union. So immediately after a few weeks' time, completely different behavior of each national country and society in each country. Big decrease of the power and impact of European Union. Completely missing unified legislature of how to handle crises. And this kind of crisis, nobody is thinking how will the society change itself after the corona crisis. Because after corona will come, or could come corona, rorona, and so on and so on. Maybe we are living in this kind of world for the future. And who is talking today about what to improve? We are talking about robotics, I will come later on, and so on and so on. Everything technology and technique, yeah. But we need firstly to improve our human and citizen understanding of necessity to be unified and to handle this kind of crisis, which could be repeated together. So this is actually, according to me, the highest challenge or biggest challenge we are facing and will face. And I'm afraid that the political system in each country, from Hungary, we know, Poland, up to let's say, Belgium, Germany, so different. And until we don't understand that we need to respect completely and fully and unify on some kind of, let's say, legislature, new legislature to handle this crisis, we need to, we will be really very much jury. And because of, say, some treatment of the corona, we see that actually this system was not prepared for this. Our legislature is so sophisticated in pharmacy, in testing the new medicine and so on, that it will last always at least half year or even 1 year until something could, let's say, be implemented widely, I mean some medicine in the society. In this 1 year time, economies could collapse, because this could be repeated in much heavier measure. And then coming to the situation and influence on the labor market, we are talking, and you have raised the question, that if some other institutions, some other, let's say, companies can implement this kind of, let's say, highly sophisticated techniques and so on. Of course, we have to understand that in highly developed sectors like automotive industry, it's much easier to implement things. Firstly, system of, let's say, production and so on. It's actually not production, it's assembly, yeah? Which is easier to robotize and so on. But also, this let's say, sector is working and much easier implementing the demand for educated people. But the automotive sector in Slovakia, from all the employees, employ just say 10%, 15% of the people. I mean, with all together, maybe 20, I mean, for suppliers and connecting and so on. But 80% of the people, 70% at least are working in other sectors, including services. And these people are with much poorer education, I would say, compared to this high. And implementation of this, let's say, education ways, how you are talking about internet, distance teaching, and so on and so on. I am afraid it's a very big challenge for next 50, not 15 years, to go and to penetrate into this wide, let's say, society and structure of employees. So it means we really need to think, and I am afraid that also our politicians on the top, Mr. Prime Minister, who is talking that in case he will open the top, just plus 2% of GDP. Okay, maybe I know about a different figure, but what about number of people working in Slovakia in this sector, not only shop, but also as a I don't know, carpenters and so on and so on. We are talking about 800,000 people, even more. When they will lose the job for 3 months, we won't forever support them. No, we have to live, unfortunately, and I'm afraid also in the future, under this scrutiny and with the, how to say, kind of understanding that Corona or other situation could happen all the time. And we need to understand that cannot all the time live from something which is called, say, Corona fund or fictive money. We need to live with real technique, with real understanding of the people here, with real understanding of the structure of the employment in each country, and present them real solution how to build up their businesses also in the future. Thank you for the beginning.
Okay, you think in a long term, which is good because we've been talking about the business models and they need to change also for the services sector. As you mentioned, it is a much bigger problem than the industry, as I perceived it well, but on the other hand, if we look at the government support, we need to think in two levels. The one is the microeconomic level, and another one is macroeconomic level. So, of course, the biggest players need to be, from the macroeconomic perspective, saved as soon as possible, despite that they have maybe more security belts than the small entrepreneurs or even the individuals who are making an entrepreneurship. But I agree with you that we should be concerned about everybody, and we should be concerned about the individual entrepreneurs and the services sector as well. Now, the question is, our panel discussion is a little bit dedicated on solutions from the technology area. So that's why we are speaking about the robotics, about the artificial intelligence, about the digital transformation. So we need to find somehow the way forward. What could be desirable for us in, let's say, not in the midterm, but try to specify some measures, maybe until the next year, what the companies or what the services sector need from government in order to survive. So could you, Roman, please try to find out what would be desirable from the government, I don't know, in terms of financial schemes, support, the grants, whatever, what could apply and could find this area of the services sector, the fertile ground?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. So firstly, of course, everybody from the entrepreneurs, small or big, is crying for the money. But I'm talking, this is not solution for the future. This is solution for 1 month, 2 months, and then what? Yeah. And what about in case we will live forever? So it means under this scrutiny. So it means what I am talking for many, many years, that society needs, firstly, I'm not against the digitalization and robotics, and you are completely right. And in the industry, we are doing maximum. Of course, we depend on, I'm coming from chemical sector, so not easy robotization, so like in automotive eventually. But anyway, we are trying. But what we need is completely change the education system in Slovakia. And this is unfortunately, I'm not talking about change the system, give them to the people internet and sophisticated system of teaching and whatever. No time to describe everything. But I'm talking to make the pupil, each child, and force him, directly or indirectly, to be creative, take care about himself from very, very big. And this is wrong way we are doing here in Slovakia, in other countries, because we don't understand that it is the value in your head and in your brain. You have to be, from the very beginning, every child to be donor of the values to the society. And we should motivate, inspire them to take care about themselves. And here is opposite. Here we have 90% almost percentage industry influence on the and shockingly, there are no people for industry. Nobody. Industry is missing people, and so on and so on. Yeah? And government, not many governments were thinking the easiest way is open the doors. Somebody come, bring me money, build up the factory, and then can actually work for you. And trade unions are collecting the same salaries like because we are working to the society, same for also this is not function. We need entrepreneurs. I mean, from very beginning, and I was educating my daughter like, and she is completely independent and so on and so on. Of course, working, but could work anywhere she wants. Never asked for one coin, and even she doesn't know where she should spend. She doesn't want even more money because she doesn't have simply time. She's not realizing what he's doing. And here, the child wants, and also we want just time. No. The realization is the work. And this is the, I would say, basic vision of every man. But we need to be creative. This we need to implement into the people. And this is the only one way how we can improve society. This is not about the foreign investment, not about digitalization only, not about anything. This is about completely change of the value of children from the very beginning, and maybe in 10 years, 20 years, will be completely different. But unfortunately, the system is like this, that we have almost 40 or 36 universities here, and from these 4 technical universities, and these 4 technical universities are should bring the people and supply the people to the industry, which creates 10% of the GDP of this republic. Completely sick. Sorry.
Okay, we need to. It would be much desirable to create an enabling environment, also with the government support for entrepreneurs or for creative brains, in order to support the innovation, in order to be able to run the pilot projects, to test them in a real time. Let's say, I don't know, 2 years, maybe 3 years period. But to bring the results on the table and to extract the value from the project, which will be noticed. Because this is something which is not very granted for. It is not very certain when there are some startups which have been which had some financial support, but they lack some continuity. They don't have exactly created an environment where they can continue with their innovative ideas. But this could be something which this is something which we are discussing for a long time. But when it comes to the crisis, like the COVID crisis, it becomes even more urgent. And we see the results of the past activities. But also we may see the results, what activities will be adopted in the future, what support schemes will be adopted in the future. So this is really a challenge for the government, also from my perspective, to raise the funds to really create enabling environment for small entrepreneurs, for innovative ideas in order to bring and extract the value to individual companies, to the society, to the customers. And this is going to be something extremely needed in the near future, because the companies will need to come closer to the customers, to identify their needs, to design their thinking and their solutions in accordance to maybe changing demands of the customers, and then completely maybe transform their business models and their supply chain, how to do so, which is the operational phase. This is the last one, what they can do for the economy. Now, we are speaking about the robotics, and we heard the opinions from distinguished experts, the chief economist of Mazars, and the representative, the vice presidents of the Employment Society from Slovakia. Now, I would like to come back to you, gentlemen. You both are great experts in the field of automation and of robotics. And you, Soren, you will be the last speaker, because you will have a presentation at the end of the discussion. So we are looking forward to it. But first of all, I would like to ask you, Libor, because there have been quite a few indications that the robotics could improve the labor environment, could make enabling environment for the employees which are temporarily out of their traditional work. They are working from the home office, or maybe they have some reductions in their salaries, but they would like to come back to the work, but they don't know what to expect. Even maybe not the employers, they are not certain what to offer, because they need to adopt quick solutions, and one of those solutions is to implement the robotics in their automation processes. So what do you think, Libor? Is it possible to think industries-wide, sectors-wide when it comes to the robotics? We've been speaking about the huge industries. We've been the key stones of the economy, which are generating the GDP contributions. We've been talking about the services sector. There you heard about the difficulties which we are facing. This is mostly related to the education and to sustaining some future business models. But how can we bring robotics closer to the different players? If I may, I give you an example, or I give the audience the example of from the hospitals from the China, but also from the Ireland, from Dublin. They introduced the robotics in an urgent state, how Corona impacted the health security system. The doctors being infected, they could not make their daily duties, to be in a close contact with the patients, to make all those necessary administrations. But this deployment of the robots in the hospitals helped a lot to make all the processes more efficient, to decrease the risks related to the pandemics. Please try to provide us with an overview, what your companies is offering, how we can utilize the robotics not as a threat to the employment, because we are going to face unemployment risks, but as an opportunity.
Great, thank you. Our company is doing processing text. That means we are building software robots which are able to respond to human via chat, email, or phone. Our customers are from various industries, and each industry doing automation from different point of view. For example, in telco, we can see there is about headcount, so it is about cost saving. But also we have call centers, and that call centers are looking for handling peaks. And especially in current situation, they have a lot of calls and they don't have enough workers which are able to respond on the phones. So basically they are looking for solutions which will help in their situation when there are peaks. But financial sectors is looking for quality, so they are always want to increase the user experience with their services, and this is again different point of view on automation. And technical companies looking for they are looking for saving of time, which their people can do on repetitive tasks, and they want to move these people to work with a higher value. So how we can help these companies? We are facing a very nice situation right now that companies which really need help with automation, they are focusing to things which have a high value, and companies which were just they want to know if automation can help them. Basically they stop all activities. So currently we can see on the market two kind of players. One, companies which are forcing to automations, and another companies which stop all investment to automation because of cash flow situation. And how we can help them? It is on two pillars. Usually we are providing some, how to say, a consultancy model. So we are consulting with them, and we are looking for the best solution which can fit their business model and business strategy. So this is the way how to educate the customers how to implement artificial intelligence to their processes. But also I would like to agree with Mr. Karlubík. We need to also change education. When we are hiring people, and it is same for a whole industry of AI, headhunters ask me, what are you looking for? What skills you need? And basically what I need is not on the market, because things what we are doing are not in our primary schools, neither in universities. So what we need is education need to change mindset of students, because we need open mind. We are looking for people which has ability to discover new things, and this requires changes in companies, which needs to agree that we can fail, because all companies are they don't like the failure. And this is against about automation and innovation and artificial intelligence. So we need to people with open mind. We need to leaders with open mind, because if we have fear, we will never do bold steps.
I completely agree with you, because the failure is also the source of information, and if we are serious about the experimenting and making an innovations by utilizing robotics and other tools which may contribute to process to be successful, then the failure needs to be taken into consideration too. And but if when it comes to the practical side, how you could imagine the companies should transform their educational systems in favor of more open-minded and more risky-prone students or people who are your potential employees?
I don't know the answer.
But you are asking companies or schools?
Are we discussing the not changing the skills, because you said that you don't have any specific preferences for people to possess the certain skills, but they should have predispositions to think openly and to be open to more experimenting, not be afraid of the failures, and so on and so forth. But are we discussing what Roman is asking you is, are we speaking at the level of the schools? Are you looking for young candidates, the absolvents, or are we speaking at the level of the companies?
Both.
Or are we speaking generally in order to make environment possible for favorable for more entrepreneurship, for more innovation, and for more deployment of more robotic solutions?
Basically, we discuss about all levels, and what we are trying to do. We are employee students from high schools or universities, and we are including them to our teams, and we would like to show them we are able to accept failures, and we need from you guys, young guys, you need to do these fails, otherwise we will have no innovations. The reason why I'm discussing it is because our senior people in Slovakia are usually very static, and it takes too much in our company culture to change their mind. For example, it can take 4 or 5 years. So we think there should be something changed on education level.
And I would like eventually add maybe this is the thing what we are talking. I was asking everybody that, because I was thinking that we are discussing better schools, because the company cannot anymore educate. You can educate the creativity from the beginning. Company already is looking for from the market for the creative people, and as we will go to the next years, next decade, so and we want to transfer the digitalization, robotics, and actually everything needs creativity. Company needs. And here we are, as a Slovak society, much behind Western countries, yes, in education, but not in education, education, the creative education, the way how it's necessary for them to be proactive, for our children to be proactive. Our children in Slovakia, they can perfectly memorize and repeat what they have been taught, actually, and take number one or number two, yeah. But it's tragedy because we need to motivate children, which are even wild, coming with the new ideas, even what teacher is talking to them. Yes? And teachers should many times involve them, actually, develop what they are talking and to argue with them. Yes, for all. Not to memorize say, no. This should create and just bring them left or right to the correct rail, yeah, with argument and with discussion, yes, and this is what our schooling system is from very, very beginning, and it has to change, because in case we change just the books, not enough, yes. Also, when you look, I was unfortunately or fortunately in school 50 years ago, yes, or something like this, 45, let's say, yes. But when I'm looking on children, they are having really the same books, even the structure of the subject almost the same, 90% the same. But it's tragedy, yeah, impossible, because this is our compulsory, all of us, to tell to the government, hey people, we are living in 21st century, and not in 20th century anymore. Sorry.
If I may, in an education system, there have been some changes and tendencies for the transformation of the education system for long term, but most of the priorities of the previous government, and I think in a sense it may continue, is to get rid of the unemployment of the absolvents from secondary vocational schools, because there was a tendency to from the young people to gain more knowledge and to come to the universities. And one of the tools the government found out as a solution would be to come to the dual system. But here we have some sort of certain skills which need to bring desirable results in accordance to the requirements of the employees. But here we are facing a completely different situation. That's why we are having also this discussion on Virtualtechsummit, that sometimes the situation changes, and really, if we need to move forward and reflect on the trends and to be competitive also with another developed countries in areas like robotics, we need to think beyond some guidelines of well-defined skills, but we need to focus on different aspects which you, Libor, mentioned, and I agree with you completely. Well, we are. Sorry.
Sorry. I would answer your question. So, how we can help our companies when I'm going to back. Basically, we need to understand the company's business models and company strategy. So we need to fully understand how the company works, and that requires to have a lot of meetings with main stakeholders of that companies. And we can see there are also not very open people because they are scared. They have absolutely no idea what does it mean AI and what is the impact on their job, or how they can be responsible for the goals from management when they don't understand what will happen. So from this perspective, we really need not just open employees, but also open managers on the customer side, and sometimes can help, for example, to have some POCs, because and agile, because when we create a team from our experts and their stakeholders, we are able to deliver some very small solution for them, and they can see and they can understand very easily what does it mean AI, and what is the benefit, and what are the limits, and this is something very, very important to open the proof of concept in these companies. But the problem is that proof of concept are not very cheap, and if there is not trust to AI and there is fear, as I mentioned, it is a very big problem to transform that companies and their digitalization on their digitalization base. So, from our point of view, maybe could very help, and this is something what we are discussing on Slovak AI board to find some funds from European Union to just to cover some enter point expense to POCs, and maybe these companies will be able to trying that artificial intelligence things, and it can be part of their education. So maybe this can be a way how to help that companies if they are scared and they have fear. Maybe can state help them at least from a financial perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Libor, thank you very much. Now we have the last speaker, Soren. Finally, you have a floor, please. You have an interesting presentation related to the robotics and how the companies should react on the crisis, how if they need to change their business models. Most of the things has already been said, but they don't know how to do it. So, and they don't know what processes to introduce. They don't know which are the solutions from the robotic side. They could improve their efficiencies. They could make their business models more viable to the future. Could you please take your floor and provide us with your presentation on the robotics and the solution to the companies?
Very quickly, I'm from Denmark, and it's been funny to listen to some of the discussions you guys had about education. Same problem here, labor crisis concerning COVID. Same problem here. In all these things. So I think I think I've been very close to coronavirus myself. As in, I've tried it personally. Not a very funny experience, but it's possible to get over. And I think that just as coronavirus is possible to get over for most people, luckily, so I think is the crisis. I normally run a company called Co, which provides business support to a lot of European major companies. And what we mostly do is help them in the transformation from what do you say, standard labor factories to more automated facilities. And as a spin-off of this, we create a platform called Hazuchová. The big question is, of course, in all of Europe, will coronavirus bring back jobs, and what kind of jobs will it bring back? So if we change the slide, or can I do that? No, we can. Okay. Fine. So of course, before and after the crisis, are the challenges we'll face, and one of the ways forward that we see. So, next slide, please. Yeah, one of the things that we saw in Europe was unemployment rates. I'll just do this, sorry. Was unemployment rates, labor shortage, big labor shortage, historically low in the industry. Most of the European companies couldn't meet their growth ambitions. Outsourcing was getting more and more. In Denmark, as in most other countries, we've outsourced major parts of our industry to, for example, countries like Poland and Hungary and whatever. And because labor shortage is so high there, we are actually trying to move the productions that we moved 30 years ago to countries with an even higher labor, even more labor. Countries like China and whatever. Can you take the next slide, please? And can I change the slide myself? Okay. We also saw that rising wages was a problem. We saw wages in every country, Czech, Poland, whatever, was going rapidly up. This is no new fact for anyone, but of course we saw a lot of businesses struggling with this. We also saw businesses that, I don't know if you know that story in Slovakia, but the story about the frog, that if you throw a frog into a pot of boiling water, it will jump up. But if you put the frog in a cup of cold water and you turn up the heat, then the frog will boil and die. And actually we saw a lot of major international businesses do exactly the last one, until suddenly they start losing money rapidly, and hence again looked to relocate their production to places with cheaper labor. I did this presentation in Ukraine the 10th of March, the day before they closed down Denmark. And I think 3 days ago I did the same presentation in Romania. And at that time, these points were valid. Can you change the slide, please? Yes, so of course we saw relocation of production to places where labor is cheap, as I said. Please change the slide again, please. And now we're here. And nobody has any idea how things look on the other side. We have a lot of factories shut down in Denmark, in Ukraine, Slovakia, whatever. But we also have a lot of export stops. Although that a country like Denmark, for example, still have open borders to transportation. In other words, businesses should be able to get their stuff. It is not the case, because if the factory is shut down in Poland, there is nothing to ship. So we've got major factories that do not get. Are there people there working? Yes, but do they have something to assemble? No, because the factories that provided these things to assemble are from China or Poland or whatever, and they're shut down. So hence our factories shut down. And now we are starting to open up Denmark again. I think most European countries hopefully will experience this the next couple of weeks. But it's so much shown us that our supply chain is very, very vulnerable. And the more and the longer we outsource these things, the more vulnerable we'll be, because we can still assemble, but if we don't get the components, assembly is, a waste of money basically. Volkswagen is facing that big time, right? So a lot of the companies that we talk to in Europe is actually saying, so all right, maybe starting up that factory in India is a bad idea. How the hell are we gonna get the same stuff produced if we move it back to Slovakia, but for a lower cost? How can we re-educate the workers that we had there? How can we make sure that even with rising wages, we can still overcome the fact that we still have to be competitive? Did we move home from home too fast? And should we have done more in the sense of getting more out of every employee? And that's a fact in Denmark, that's a fact in Poland, and that's a fact in all the countries that we operate in. And of course, yes, what do we hear clients say? We hear that, maybe robots and automation is a good idea. I totally agree with, I don't know if I say this correctly, Libor, about automation when it comes to, for example, RPA, as a non-physical robots. That's a big thing, and it's definitely going to be a big thing further on. But maybe RPA is not the big issue when it comes to outsourced industries. RPA is more valid on, for example, in Denmark, we use it for handling of tax things or, you know, clerk work. So how do we get our industries back to closer to us, but at the same cost as moving them to a different country with lower risk and less crowded? Well, the three things we always say is, why do we automate? Well, we try to do risk reduction, reduce dependency on employees. We will try to improve competitiveness, and it will hopefully give us a strategic advantage. That's the reasons why every people or every company is looking at automation. But the problem is, of course, that when it's been easier just to hire 4 more guys in China, then we've looked at these things and said, yes, it's cool, but I'll hire 4 more guys. I think Corona will be one of the drivers that makes us rethink this. It's not just something I think, it's what we hear from factories all over the world, this is maybe a chance of not outsourcing. This is a chance of thinking education. Let's move in a bit more technology, but technology we know works. Let's screen and help our local industry in being successful in adapting technology, and let's re-educate our workers to accomplish these tasks. That's one of the big things we hear, and I think that's one of the big positive things maybe the Corona crisis will give us. Next slide, please. But of course there are challenges. The classic robot market is the problem. It's very immature, it's very non-transparent and inaccessible, and just a few examples on that. Most of the robotic deals that we see today in Europe are done no more than 100 kilometers from where the buyer is. In other words, we trade very local when it comes to technology, which is of course is great, but for a Slovakia factory, the quick way to a welding robot is perhaps not 100 kilometers away. It might be in the Czech Republic. Or for a Czech Republic factory, the closest technology company with a good solution is perhaps not in Czech. It's perhaps in Slovakia or in Germany or whatever. So that's the problem. Problem is, again, as Libor said on AI as well, it's a very innovation-driven market, which is fine, but innovation is good, but we need some more solid ground to stand on if we need to take our industry back home. There's a large technology love, which means that we love all the things that we can buy, but we need to make sure that they also work in our own production. These are very, 60 to 80% of the implementations that we see doesn't go as planned because they bought the technology because they thought it was interesting. They didn't buy the technology because that was what they needed. We also see the customers back once. We also see it's difficult for customers to find their potential, and it's difficult to get a market overview. So even though robotics and automation is a good idea, we see too high investments because things go wrong. We see too many failing underperforming installations. In other words, we see a waste of money, and then we send things to China. So next slide, please. Yeah. So one of the reasons why we did How to Robots was to try to overcome that. We tried to do a digital robot hub that customers could access to get an overview of a market that's currently is very closed, and they can see that locally. Next slide, please. It's a tool where you can see, you can find knowledge, you can find tools to find your company's robot potential. You can find insights on how to do this and that with automation. In other words, if I'm looking for mobile robots, before I go out and buy stuff, what is the good manual? How do I start? A robot marketplace, buy and sell used robots. Very, very important, because there is no such a thing today. And there is a directory, currently the only one in the world, where you can actually find about 10,000 robotic companies sorted in what categories you might need. In other words, welding, assembly, whatever. That should make the local robotic buyer, put him in a situation where he doesn't have to get the local company to invent everything from scratch, but I can actually look a little further abroad and see if there is possible solutions ready-made and ready to rock close to him. Next slide, please. So the directory, next slide, yeah, gives you an idea of, this is just a European map, but it gives you an idea of the entire world map of suppliers, all the different suppliers there is, sorted on country, sorted on what kind of robotic and automation solutions they supply. Next slide, please. And then there's insights, articles, white papers, guidelines, and insights from manufacturers. In other words, before you start your journey, what should you look for? There's a lot of local stuff on this, but it's very biased because it's very manufacturer made. It's made by the robotic producers. And of course, they are in a selling position, so we are trying to do this in a neutral position. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah. And next slide. There's white papers. How do I carry out my own automation screening? How do I find out if my factory in the chemical business, what can I do? What would be interesting for a chemical factory? In what kind of solutions exist on the market? What should I look for? What kind of processes are stupid? And which ones can I, with an advantage, automate? Next slide, please. And then there's, again, the robotic potential finder. This is a tool that helps the companies map out the production floor, map out what will help them and how to use this. I think you again, Libor, mentioned it, using AI. Same tool here with physical automation. Where could, in your world, where could my company with advantage use AI? This tool is the same with physical robots, where in my factory, looking at quality, whatever, try to take the next slide, please. Where can I map out my factory? This is just the end result of the tool, but it will map out the different processes and say, where is the biggest potential? Where is the highest risk? What kind of processes in my factory is easy to automate, and which processes give me a very bad result. Next slide, please. And then there's a marketplace. It's our first try to matchmake buyers and sellers in a world of robotics, where it's difficult to find who's providing what for who. Next slide, please. So there's a catalog of robotic solutions, there's a used robot market, and you can do your own tender. So if you want to ask your local or English market for what kind of assembly robotic solutions would exist for your business, you can do it here. Yes, it's parts of the marketplace. So just end the presentation here. Yeah, just end it, that's fine. End presentation, please. Can you shut the presentation down? Take it down. So anyway, so what we try to achieve here, this is our first draft. We took all the things that we learned from helping big and smaller businesses in automation. And we tried to do a generic tool that works in Denmark, that works in Slovakia, that works everywhere. We just launched it, but we've used it internally for 100 companies for years. And this is our first try. And How to Robot for us is a way to reach out to local business associations, local governments, to try to make this conversion into automation easier, to share knowledge and to provide information. So we don't think that we know the whole stuff, but we're trying to create a platform that will enable this transformation. That was, I think, my presentation here.
Okay, Soren, thank you very much. A very interesting transformation on the platform, Robot Marketplace, which is basically a one-stop shop for the robots in order to overcome the gap between the decisions whether to invest the capital in buying the robots or in transforming the company's business models in favor of more automation and more robotics. Now, how about advisory services? Is it an legal advice, or you said it perfectly works in many countries? You mentioned several. Is it something which we can expect in the near future, or?
No, as I said, How to Robot is built on top of Gain & Co., which is a consultancy company. And we work locally with the different factories. We do standard robotic contracts in the EU and whatever, but we would normally work in, for example, out of Slovakia, we would provide services with the help of local business associations or with the help of local knowledge in terms of, I don't know, Mazars, for example, because the factories, primarily larger factories, have a big business impact in their area. In other words, it's a joint force operation. But for example, a company like Siemens that have factories all over the world is a company that we help in different markets to automate. So a calculation that works in Germany does not work the same way in Slovakia. It's different price index, it's different labor, it's whatever. But working with local organizations like local business associations, we're able to create business cases and investments that actually works long term. Yep.
Okay. Now we are coming to the very end of our panel discussion, but I would like to maybe raise or summarize final remarks, or if you have any questions among you, the panelists, you may ask as well. It is an interesting opportunity because we are having a small working group now here. Albeit I'm sitting in the studio at Obchodná ulica in Bratislava, and you are in a different location, but this is it. We are in a digital transformation, online streaming, and I hope you enjoy your locations, but we don't have time to introduce them. So if I may, I just very briefly summarize, because we've been discussing different, many points of view of this difficult theme, topic which may have a real impact on the transformation of the companies, may have, and I hope so, the impact serve as a recommendation for the government, where to invest money, how to open the economy in a favor of channeling the funds in a favor of more innovation and reflecting on these trends. But I have to say that we all agreed upon that we are not speaking about some gradual process. We are really speaking in a real time, albeit virtual, but in a real situation. And we all try to find a way how to handle the deficiency in the education system. So if you, Soren, offered an opportunity through your platform to change the business models from outsourcing to more localized solutions, which is one step forward, maybe to introducing or deployment of the robotics, of the automation of the processes, making the companies more efficient. If Libor offered also a market opportunity for very talented and very open potential employees or collaboratives to work on the common themes of the robotics, but really to cultivate the environment together, because this is a very complex thing. We cannot speak of one thing instead of another. Martin, he mentioned very concrete economic risks and opportunities where could maybe these solutions be implemented, but we need to speak a little bit longer and more about these solutions. And Roman, you tried to articulate the requirements from the perspective of the employees. So I think we are on the right track, but let's see how the things are going to develop. Hopefully you enjoyed the discussions and you enjoyed all those previous panel discussions. This is the first round of the Virtual Tech Summit, and it is my this is my grand thanks to the Tech Summit events and to the Future Proofed. They made it really in a short time with very limited resources operational, and they took a lead in order to show that the digital transformation is possible even at the level of the entrepreneurship, and to keep the community together and to integrate the community with the topic specific and trendy issues which could have a real impact on the problems vis-a-vis the corona crisis now we are facing. So thank you very much again, and last but not least, I would like to invite you all to share with us your thoughts. And of course, if you have any ideas how to improve the organization or how to contribute, we are very open to your ideas. And we also created a LinkedIn group for you. I'm going to try now to find the link because I cannot see on the screen. And we made a good progress because we raised more than 500 people to be our followers on or to be participants in this LinkedIn group, Coronavirus. And so the web address is linkedin.com/group/123846696/. So if you would like to join us, you can watch all those live streams, all those videos, which are also available on YouTube. And you can keep in touch with all those experts and the communities, because this is the basic idea of our Virtual Tech Summit and the Tech Summits, to keep the expert community and the government public representative together to make an innovation and all the digital transformation possible as fast as soon as possible, and not to be that much reliant on the external support, but we can do it as a community. Okay, so have a nice evening, and see you, hopefully see you on some other Tech Summit events.